I have beaten Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Game took me roughly 15 hours to beat, not bad, and like the 70 million other people on the internet, I have thoughts. Now, before I jump into this, I do want to preface this by saying I was dreading this game just as much as anybody else was, alright? I did not like the fact that Rocksteady spent almost a decade making an online co-op shooter. That's just obscene. Also, I was getting serious Avengers vibes from it, like most other people, because the more we kept seeing this game, the worse it looked. And then there was that infamous screenshot showing the HUD before launch, and that was a really great way to make me instantly tired. Like, I remember always feeling like I was gonna get a headache, like I wanted to go to bed. It was such a alarming screenshot. But most of all, I'm just sick of DC and Warner Brothers desperately trying to make Suicide Squad as the IP a thing. Like, it was interesting at first, but how many times are we going to revisit the bad guys play the good guys well? It's a decent concept, but if all you're going to throw at us is Suicide Squad, then I just don't want any part of it. And on top of that, I didn't think the James Gunn movie was any better than the 2016 movie. It's not interesting. It just isn't. I'd be lying if I said I didn't have a morbid curiosity about Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, though. At the end of the day, this was a game that was more or less developed by leads behind the Batman Arkham games before Sefton Hill and company left. Surely there has to be something here that the marketing team isn't properly conveying, right? I truly didn't believe I was going to stick with it until the end, though. The main story behind Kill the Justice League was solidly written overall with the way Harley, Boomer, Deadshot, and Shark banter with each other. It never comes off as if they hate each other, just annoyed at their situation. It really shows how both of the Suicide Squad films fell flat with how mean-spirited and angsty the crews of those films were. Poison Ivy and Toyman were easily the worst parts of the story with their Twitter speak and Borderlands-style jargon. You know, the whole, hey, go do this thing and make sure you don't die because that would be bad. It's super cringy and annoying, and I tried to just get their missions done the second that they popped up, just so I didn't have to deal with them for who knows how long. Combat, on the other hand, was immensely satisfying. I could pop baddies and blast them to ashes all day long. Zipping around as Boomerang made me play the character almost exclusively. King Shark was fun to smack the shit out of dudes, and Deadshot was mildly amusing with how his jetpack gave you more control in the air. Harley, though, I just wasn't too keen on playing hackneyed Spider-Man. She's easily the worst when it comes to playstyles. Like, it's doable to play as her, but it's just not as fun as the other three. The live service elements, though, are deserving of their scrutiny. The way the multiverse is ham-fisted into the story makes the concept seem like it was demanded by higher-ups and not by Hill or his team. Man, the kiddos, they like these multiple universes thingy. We need one too, so let's have one. You're just also bombarded with 7 different currencies, none of which seem to have any purpose nor necessity to spend. I bought maybe a few rerolls from Penguin just to see if I can give Boomer's shotgun better stats, but nothing notable came out of it. And just seeing the endgame, the Finite Crisis mode, it has me questioning if I really want to go for the Platinum Trophy, especially since you have to max out every character's stats. As for the mission structure, this is easily the worst part of the game, and it's some of the worst mission design I have seen in any game in recent memory. Nothing was more annoying than starting up a bug hunt or a civilian rescue and be met with, enemies can only be damaged with grenades, or damage boosters that only one particular enemy drops, or the 5-fingered balloon poochie slap of despair. Many of these bring combat to a grinding halt since you're only restricted to one method of attack. With Shark, Harley, and Deadshot sitting at level 2 or 3 each, I basically had to resort to using Boomerang just to make it out of those dumb, stupid missions just because everyone else was underdeveloped in gear and skill tree investment. It's my fault as the player, honestly, I'll admit that. I should have spent more time leveling up the other 3, but still, the frequency of these conditions across all the missions make them a real nuisance. Like, What's the point of having such diverse playstyles across all 4 characters if you're going to restrict us into using only the shield harvest attack to kill enemies, or only using critical attacks to kill enemies? It just doesn't make any sense. Don't you want me to play around with the effects? Don't you want me to play around with the skill tree mechanics and stuff? I don't know, man. All that said, I don't think Kill the Justice League is an awful game. Like I said, I loved the combat, I loved the story. It's the mission design and the live service elements that really kill it. But at the end of the day, it is a game that will cater to some and not to others. But before we get into that, let's talk about today's sponsor, Nuance. Nuance can be a magical thing. It is what highlights the true meaning behind the thoughts, feelings, questions, concerns, internal and external conflicts. It can show the alternative to something when placed under different conditions. I can enjoy a good friend's company, even if their ramblings can be cumbersome. I can enjoy some spicy chicken nuggets from Wendy's if it means I won't experience the ring of fire the following morning. The internet can be a wonderful place, but it must become less reactive, less hyperbolic, and less hostile to achieve that. Now see how easy that was for me to say one thing even if I feel differently about one aspect of it? That is the power of nuance. You can say one thing while also meaning another. I did not enjoy Doom Eternal, but I am glad to have played it because it led to me meeting one of my closest friends. Dead by Daylight does entertain me, even if people's obsession with meta builds makes things stale half the time. I had fun playing Kill the Justice League, despite glaring flaws in mission structure and forced elements of live service designs. I say all this because the outrage against this game and many other mid-games have become increasingly annoying over the last few years. Biomutant, Forspoken, Immortals of Avium, were they all unimpressive games? Sure, when you look at everything that they do, they aren't all that impressive. Biomutant was just another open world game. Forspoken, another open world game. Immortals of Avium, it's a shooter. But for the amount of vitriol folks have been spewing towards games like this, these games that generate 6s and 7s when they launch, I'm genuinely confused. Just a simple search of Suicide Squad Kill Justice League Bad on YouTube can show you how much of this game is blown out of proportion. What do you even call these kinds of exaggerated reactions? Unhinged? Terminally online? Inhuman? Look, I know I can be at fault for exaggerated reactions too. I have a strong resentment towards certain games for very specific reasons. Some find my disdain for hold button prompts to be absurd no matter how many times I explain that it's how they're implemented that matters. I'm more harsh against cinematic games because of their intense focuses on story and graphics rather than gameplay and UI. Case in point, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. All of what I just said are statements that still have nuance. I could probably make entire videos out of those. But in Kill the Justice League's case, I can sort of understand the frustration. I get it. Rocksteady spent nearly a decade working on this game, and this isn't what we wanted. It isn't a game with a new hero, it isn't a continuation of the Arkham games, and it's a game that requires an online connection. It all sucks. All are valid frustrations, especially considering Warner Brothers is charging $70 for a half-baked product. But the extreme mindset on display is just ludicrous, and after looking at the game's SteamDB page, I have to wonder how many content creators actually stuck with the game longer than an hour or two. How many simply looked at cutscenes and a little bit of someone else's gameplay? How many posted bits out of context just to make the game seem cringy? How many people finished the game to truly give an honest review or unfiltered opinions? The same goes for the overly positive folks who pretend there's nothing wrong with the game whatsoever. Look, it's okay to not like every little thing, just as it's okay to not hate every facet of a thing. Once upon a time, I did have that mindset, okay? Anything with realistic graphics to me seemed boring. Any game that had a gun with a first-person camera was Call of Duty. Online games were for basement dwellers with too much time and money. It wasn't until I started making videos for WatchMojo that I started to learn when to give something a fair shake, even while I still had criticisms. Let me tell you, When you really sit down and start to take in certain aspects of various games and have to write about them in a light opposite to your own, it can make you question your own beliefs. Imagine a Chicago resident writing about how New York has the best pizza, or a 49ers fan talking about how Kansas City deserved to win the Super Bowl. The second you begin to recognize various strengths and weaknesses of things you don't like, not everything is black and white anymore. Not to get philosophical, but this applies to everything in life. Politics, family troubles, beliefs, religion, self-reflection. Sure, the thing is bad, but do you understand how it can be good? Yes, the thing may seem good, but do you see the ways this could end up being bad? In some cases, you might wind up giving the thing you thought you wouldn't like a shot and end up really liking it. I did that with Persona 5 a few years ago. Now, I'm playing Persona 3 Reload, and I'm obsessed with it. Of course, there is such a thing as an objectively bad game. We can all spot an obvious stinker like the shovelware you see on PlayStation Store or Nintendo eShop. But to label any of the aforementioned games as bad, the games like Suicide Squad in this case, it's just, I find it very disingenuous and suspicious. As I've mentioned in my content and social media videos, there are folks out there who aren't who they present themselves as. With there being more financial incentive to exaggerated opinions, many of these people are only saying, "Oh, game's so good," or "Game's so bad, don't buy no game," to please the algorithm. It's to confirm, they say this stuff to confirm their own biases and the biases of their audience. And they do it all just to generate that sweet ad money and clout. So when I see people already jumping on Suicide Squad and stepping on its throat and saying, "Oh, worst game of the year," and we're in February 2024, it just comes off as comically obvious that you're just trying to get my click. You're trying to get my engagement. You're trying to rob me of my time. When in reality, this game is not as bad as people are making it out to be. And I know that some people are really not going to like anything to do with this game. That's fine. But just the amount of "this is the worst game of the year," it's like, it's just so tone deaf to what a bad game really is. You know what's a bad game? Waifu Impact. That's a bad game. You know what else is a bad game? The remake to 13. That was a bad game. You know what else is a bad game? Frickin' Bad Rats, Superman 64, E.T. Atari. Those games are bad, and they are objectively bad. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is nowhere close to that league. It's like, it's lukewarm, and it's okay to say that. This isn't the worst game of the year so far. I guarantee you I can go on PlayStation Store alone and find 20 games that have come out since the year turned that are way, way, way more deserving to be called worst game of the year so far. Overall, I enjoyed my time with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. I'm not happy that this is what came out of Rocksteady 9 years after Arkham Knight, but for what it does well in combat, gunplay, and story, I'm ready to restart so I can play with friends and even get a long play done for Long Play Archive. It's gonna suck dealing with those missions where I can only use the unholy flatulence of Goemon to enrage only brutes, but at least I can try to map my strategy better to make them more digestible. Doesn't make them acceptable in their low quality still, but just gotta roll with the punches as I keep playing, you know? Hopefully future updates and expansions will introduce more creative missions. Folks, all of this was just another example of what I've been saying in my last couple videos. Explore. Don't let bad actors with honest reviews and unfiltered opinions, which I gotta do a whole video on that, man. But don't let these bad actors sway you because they say, "Ooh, this good," or "Oh, this too bad, this no good, no buy, don't go the worst game year." If something interests you, don't be afraid to read about various more stable opinions. Watch trailers more than once or twice. Think about your tastes and whether the product will cater to yours or not. Just please do yourself a favor. Quit living a Steamboat Willie life. There's more flavor, there's more context, there's more Nuance in the world of Technicolor. Join us in the modern era, please.